Hello everyone. Age of Empires has been dropping patches left, right, and center recently. Obviously, right after the DLC launched, we had that quick patch that nerfed the House of Lancasters because they were far, far too strong. And now, barely a couple of weeks later, we also have more changes coming through, balance updates and bug fixes for the civilizations. So we're going to jump right in here. For those not familiar, what we do is we jump straight to the balance and gameplay changes for all civilizations, and then the civilization-specific changes, and we kind of showcase how they're doing based on significant buffs or significant nerfs on this chart right here to kind of see where they're likely going to land going forward based on these changes. That being said, after that, we'll go through all the bug fixes and stuff in case you have not seen it. And let's jump right into things and get started. So, balance and gameplay changes for all civilizations. The Springald has been nerfed. The range has been reduced, and also the ranged resistance has been reduced as well. So they're going to take more damage from ranged attacks, either from crossbows or archers. So that means they are going to be easier to kill. They were already pretty easy to pop. Definitely interesting to see them getting nerfed a little bit. I think potentially Springald massing was getting a bit too strong. I would say, if anything, this might impact the Ottomans the most, just because they were getting these for free and often were able to build up a pretty significant siege mass of Springalds to take care of their opponents. Fishing has been nerfed again. So that means that the fish gather rate has been reduced on the shoreline a little bit, and also deep water has been reduced a little bit as well. So that means that water's not going to be as important. And I'm kind of finding, especially with some of these hybrid maps as we're going forward, as fishing is getting nerfed slowly, kind of piece by piece in terms of their gather rate, that's definitely going to have an impact on the strategies that you can use on the water, because it might not be game over as much if you lose that water. And it might be kind of a way to get back into the game with the second town center. We'll see. AI players, we'll skip on that, and then this is just casters. So let's jump directly into the civilization-specific changes, and we will start to categorize things. So the cistern cost has been decreased from 125 to 120 stone, and what this means is that you don't have to go out and build a mining camp on your stone in order to build that first cistern. You may still want to do that to continue to increase your stone gather rate, but you don't have to do that anymore, and that is technically a bit of a buff for the Byzantines, to be honest. So I'm going to throw them into the buffs category, because that was one of the things that was keeping them down in the early game, was the fact that they were delayed a little bit, had to use that 50 wood for that extra mining camp, and then they really started to boom up significantly once they were able to get that 4 or 5 cistern level. But if they're able to kind of get that first cistern without that, I think that's a significant buff to their early game, which is kind of going to be a knock-on effect later on into the game. It's not a big change by any means, but I am going to put that into enough of a buff category. Next up, we have Chinese. So the Grenadier, the cost has been reduced, and then the range has also been increased. So a little buff for the Chinese. I'm going to say that this doesn't do too much to the Chinese. I think it's pretty much they're going to be the same. Grenadiers were not a particularly massed unit. They were kind of rare, to be honest. And so, yeah, not too much of a change for them there. Back over here on the Delhi Sultanate, there are some changes here. So the Howdah effect has been decreased from 30% to 25% health. Armor Beast effect has been decreased from 25 to 20% health. Again, these are technologies inside of the House of Learning. They're Castle Age landmark. Professional Scouts research time has been increased from 262 to 350 seconds. So Delhi is going to take a long time to research Professional Scouts, and for that to kind of come in, it means that Delhi aggression early on is going to be more important, I feel like. And then Scholar increased as well by 5 gold. Dome of the Faith as well is going to only kind of discount that by half, I believe. So it's going to be interesting. It's definitely the most significant nerfs, I feel like, on this list for Delhi. I don't know if I would go so far to say that this was a massive, massive change to their playstyle or what they're going to be doing. But that being said, I am going to say that they are in the nerf category for sure. These are changes that are very much in line with trying to keep them weaker. Absolutely. Holy Roman Empire. This is just a charge bonus being incorrectly displayed, so no changes whatsoever to the HRE there. They need some nerfs, but they are not getting them in this patch. They're still going to be one of the strongest civilizations in the game. Yumi Ashigaru, the cost has been reduced by 5 food. This was something that you would spam pretty significantly, and so that is a decent buff to the Japanese. Maybe we'll see more Yumi Ashigaru kind of coming through as their bows. Yeah, we'll see. It's technically a buff, so I think I put them into the buff section, even though it's not very big. Technically the smallest of buffs for the Japanese players who will be celebrating, because Japanese is in a bit of a rough spot right now. The Malian, Musafati warrior cost has been reduced by 5 food, And this is, again, a unit that you are very much interested in spamming for that kind of like Zerg overwhelm in the late Castle Age once your economy comes online with all the pit mines and all the cows. So, yeah, I am thinking that that's a pretty decent buff to the Malians. So similar situation with the Japanese. It's not massive. It's not going to change their playstyle forever, but that is definitely a buff on that side. Mongols, it's going to be changing a bunch of their technologies. First of all, monastic shrines is available in the Castle Age, and then discounting a ton of their different technology. Whistling arrows was huge in terms of the kind of screech that you could do on that one. Additional torches you wouldn't normally get, and the raid bounty wasn't necessarily something you would normally get as the upgrades, especially not the improved versions. This was only if you were in like late Imperial in some sort of FFA situation and you were just spending your resources on whatever you had left to research. But yeah, definitely a buff to the Mongols a little bit. And I think this is going to impact specifically them in a positive way. So that's going to put them in the buff category. But then we go over here. They had an exploit with the Wolf's Den that I didn't know about. But then this one was something I saw where the Mongol raid bounty bonus was providing resources when units were just torching the building as opposed to when it was destroying it. So in some cases you would kind of delete your mining camp, but it was after the Mongol player had already gotten the bonus from the raiding bounty. So I feel like this is a slight nerf a little bit, but in general, just a small buff, a little bit of happiness thrown to the Mongols. You like to see it because they are in rough shape, so a slight increase for them, ever so slightly. Next up, we have the Ottomans, the Akinji cost. These are the horse archers that people don't really build very often. Also reduced production time from 25 to 24. This is, again, like the Chinese, a unit that isn't really used very often. Not even in team games, I feel like. It's very rare, and so as a result, I really think that Ottomans, despite needing a little bit of love, and especially with the fact that the sprinkled nerfs have come through, I think they're the same. They might even be a little bit worse as a result of those kind of generalized sprinkled nerfs, because those free sprinkles they were getting to mass up to a significant mass are now going to be much more fragile to archers and ranged damage, and also they're going to be kind of not hitting from as far away. So that's why I'm going to put Ottomans in the slight nerf category. Nothing too major, but it does count. And then again, Rus, this is, I think, is to be in line with the other fishing changes, is going to have deep water fish gather rate reduced. So since it's just kind of across the board there, that makes them the same as everybody else. Going over to the variant civilization changes. First up, we have the House of Lancaster, who can no longer place their Lancaster castle within 8 tiles of the enemy capital town center. Thank goodness the Lancaster castle rush that was the bane of some people's existence on the ladder has been kind of completely nerfed out of existence there, which is very nice. The Demi-Lancer charge attack being decreased from 16 to 12 because currently it's higher than the Castle Age charge attack in Feudal Age. It's going to make it so that these horses that you're getting kind of for hiring from the manors, you're popping out 11 Demi-Lancers with 9 manors, but it's not going to be as impactful as it used to be. And that's a pretty decent nerf for sure. And then the Yeoman cost being increased, thank goodness slightly reducing the speed of synchronized shot. I am not a pro player, and so I was not reacting fast enough to that volley of arrows that was coming down and decimating my army. So that right there is kind of, again, like the Delhi, one of our more significant nerfs kind of coming through. It's not going to change their playstyle. This is not completely adjusting how they're going to be using their manors or anything like that, which is what I'm kind of saving the significant nerfs category for. But it is going to slow them down a little bit, which is nice to see. Coming back to the Knights Templar, base villager wood income reduced from 0.65 to 0.63. That's nice because this is a strong civilization. Normally when something new drops in Age of Empires or any game, it takes people a while to kind of learn them, and people are really struggling and not finding a lot of wins. I've run into an uncountable number of Knights Templar players on the rank ladder. People are playing at a relatively high level very quickly. So I do think the civilization was very strong. I know Beastie ranked them in S tier in his most recent tier list, and I fully agree that they were in a shape where they had a lot of strength and a lot of flexibility in terms of their pathways. Elite Hospitaller Knight has been nerfed a little bit. Armor's been decreased. Health has also been decreased, because they were quite strong in Feudal Age, so I think that they deserved kind of maybe to be pulled back ever so slightly. Sergeant Damage has been increased. These were only good at potentially preventing night rushes from either Rus or French or JD. Otherwise, they just do no damage at all. So having an increase in this, maybe that makes them kind of more useful to use. Genitours have an increased range, so they're kind of going to be a little bit better. Heavy Spearman bonus is going to be meaning they have actually a choice of what they are going to be able to use to deal with the Delhi elephants, because before you absolutely had to go with those Genoese crossbowmen because otherwise you were toast. Your spearmen were not going to be strong enough to deal with those elephants. The Condottiero, which is the one you get in Age 4, the swordsman kind of countering gunpowder units, reduced damage from gunpowder, and also armor increased from 1 melee to 1 range to 2 melee and 3 ranged. So they're going to be more of a kind of generalist unit by a little bit thanks to that. And so before these were kind of a never build, and maybe now they might be kind of useful, especially as a raiding unit later on in the game because they're extremely fast. And then this is more of kind of an actual kind of picking in terms of the unit composition within your control groups and stuff. It's not a religious unit, it's a military unit, which is nice. Tough call. They're going to be definitely reduced as a result of that wood gather rate at the very top there. But then the rest was kind of mostly buffs to their different units. And it wasn't a lot of nerfs to their more significant playstyle. Is that a buff or is that a nerf? I'm going to say that it brought certain things into line with how other civilizations could potentially deal with elephants or also sergeant damage just not being kind of useful in any way, shape, or form. And also their genitours having range to actually hit things. But that wood nerf, even though it's slight, is going to actually slow them down a little bit because it's also going to impact their food economy. So I do think that slows them down. So technically a nerf, very small, definitely balanced out by some buffs to the units. So it's close to being the same, but I'm going to put them in kind of being taken down a peg ever so slightly. Next up, we have Xushi's Legacy. The Grenadier, same thing with the China kind of changes. And so as a result, we're going to do the same thing. They're coming in here to the same. In terms of other changes, not a lot of these civilizations here are really impacted specifically or by the kind of sprinkled changes or the fishing changes. So I really do think that it's kind of an easy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 throwing people into this same category where they're going to be the same. So no massive changes on this patch. I don't think they needed any massive changes necessarily unless it was a nerf to the HRE. But in this case, just kind of a couple tweaks here and there, making some adjustments and seeing where things land. So that's where I'm going to say we land on the overall buffs and nerfs tier lists. No huge gameplay and game style changes for any civilizations, but just a couple tweaks here and there. So with that said, let's go back to the patch notes. We'll scroll all the way back up to the top and review some of the other changes that have come through. Really looking forward to this kind of new game mode. Obviously, I love the additional kind of challenges that we can do, and I kind of love doing those on myself or with friends, putting those together. But this Conqueror's Cache, where you're battling for control over kind of specific points of the map, is kind of an interesting game mode idea. Kind of taking advantage of those points of interest and more of like a King of the Hill, capture the flag, or hold the point style gameplay could be interesting. And it could be kind of like a potential new gameplay style for Age of Empires 4 as a whole. I'm certainly interested to kind of see how this goes. In terms of gameplay, a lot of AI changes. AI ships are now fleeing when faced with enemy incendiary ships, and then military also flees when there's monks that are converting, which is good. AI players now avoid producing fishing boats if there's no deep water fish deposits, which is good. They're not going to be wasting their time. AI players now avoid building fishing boats that don't even have fishing spots. You like to see that. AIs now correctly build naval military on lake maps, which is great. Oh, that's good, actually, because I feel like the AI would really get confused about naval military. They would kind of never do so on maps, so that's good. And then Knights Templar AI has just been improved to make sure they're doing the right things, which is great. Hotkeys. There's some good hotkeys in here. Select all currently elected types. Not really important. Not sure exactly what that means. So we'll have to test that out. Selecting all economic units on screen. Not the useful. All military units on screen. It could be useful, potentially, actually. If you have that, then you're not going to be doing your select all military. You can just focus on an area, kind of grab everybody all together. So that could be good. All military, ranged, and cavalry on screen. All siege on screen. Very specific, very niche. Could be used, but I feel like if you're using your control groups in certain ways, that's not going to be necessarily the most important. Select all traders. Hallelujah. Thank goodness. That's a really good one that we've been waiting for a long time. So we now no longer have to kind of look at all of our units and select them from there. We can now select all our traders with one single hotkey. Thank you, devs, for bringing that in. All trade chips is good. Cycling through idle scout units is okay. Idle religious units is okay. General map changes, specifically for Enlightened Horizon. The closest berry patch has been removed. So then the question is there even any food that's kind of directly under your TC? Or are you pretty much kind of going naked just with the sheep that you have? And hoping that your opponent doesn't kind of sneak around and cause problems for you by looping around the back or coming through directly to your base could potentially open up some more aggressive playstyles on that map, kind of keeping your opponent locked into their base, not being able to go out onto the food even behind their base. More berry patches, though, are going to kind of give you that food if we're behind the base, so you might have to kind of cut off that single corner. Sacred sites are spaced out further away, so this is a bit of a nerf maybe to Delhi, who was kind of really loving having those side by side. And the neutral market is now an abandoned outpost, which means you can now use that point of interest to get vision into your enemy's base if you kind of control that, which is an interesting feature. Large gold vein and a market and a wolf stand now spawns at the far edges of the map, which means that Mongols are now going to be potentially a very strong civilization on Enlightened Horizon because they can put their silver tree in one corner and start some trade on the far side, so that could be big. And relic spawns, which is good, and distributing them more fairly, which is also good. Carmel, 2 deer packs of 10 instead of 3 of 7, so 1 deer missing. Not too much, but it's just going to be more, I guess if it's 2 deer packs of 10, does that mean it's on one side and the other side, or are they going to be 20 over on the one area? It means maybe there's more of an impetus to go out onto the map and get both of the food sources on Carmel, maybe. And then larger deer packs avoid spawning next to each other and going to be more evenly on the map. So there you go. So they are going to be potentially on different sides. Any balances and bug fixes? Again, yeah, the rank lobby page, you could do a thing where you could see their names. Also taunting. I noticed people would be like, do the /3, good luck, have fun. And all of a sudden I'd do the same, be like, wait, now they know who I am. They could maybe look at what I'm trying to play. A crash in the single player is nice. Soft lock is disconnected and reconnected during the lobby countdown is good. Some stuff with the drivers, always nice to see that. Crash the curve when playing larger player matches with certain civilizations, so potentially better for 4v4 and 3v3 players in team games. Less crashes, less people kind of disconnecting at the very beginning could be nice. And then this one was also interesting. Yeah, you would drop a carcass with a scout while being hit, and then you couldn't pick it up again until you manually dropped off this like invisible deer carcass that was on top of you, so you were kind of stuck. And then pin mine text description, which is nice. And we're back to the balance and changes. So really small patch, but interesting to see the devs seem to be kind of prioritizing these smaller mini patches, just making small tweaks to the civilizations in order to kind of get it going. And I'm really appreciating having the devs being so on top of things so that if something is completely out of whack, they're right there to kind of come in with the ban hammer or the buff hammer to make the changes. So that is everything for me on this patch update. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll catch you on the next Age of Empires video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one, and bye for now.